Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Today in Space. We're back for another segment of People of Space, where we get to talk to the people who are in the industry, who are actively working and serving within the space industry. And we've got a very exciting guest today. Chuck Dorn is joining us, the COO of SolaMed Solutions, and someone who's served for a very long time with a very extended resume within NASA and the space industry for medicine and human health and performance. So, Chuck, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Alex, for having me. Glad to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Yes, I'm already excited, and I feel like it's going to go for a little while here because you have so much that you can speak on. I mean, there's not a lot of people in the space industry that have this combination of experience in the academic side, in the business side, and in the public sector for, serving within NASA. You have such a unique experience that I'm excited for us to dive in here.
Well, I think that the challenge, in my career, I'm the one who's like, he doesn't have a PhD. He's not an MD or a DO. He's not a physician, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, but I've been in the room where it happens, as it were. As John Bolton said, I've seen it. I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two. These are things my wife hates when I say, but it's true. I mean, when you find yourself in a position where you're always you're supporting somebody or some effort, and you're part of a team. I mean, you can't win a Super Bowl if you don't have, or a national championship if you don't have star players. And it's not just one, right? Although one would say LeBron or Joe Burrow, something like that. Yep. but you do need a cast of characters around you to make things, to achieve things that are greater than you, but that support what we as a nation want to do. I think that's important.
Yeah, and so I experienced that myself as an aerospace engineer, where, especially early on in my career trying to find a job, I was underqualified and overqualified for every job that I applied for, and it was almost like choose which one I am, for me, it was a struggle trying to get into the industry in the first place. And then the podcast became my digital resume, and now I get to talk to folks like yourself, which is really what I wanted to do the whole time.
Well, I always use a story of my father was a mechanical engineer. He did not finish his degree in the late 50s when I was born, because I was born. So, he needed to, do that and not focus on. Right. But anyway, he worked for a company in Toledo, Ohio, and one of the experiments he talked about was they had a thing that would pull behind a semi called a towing dynamometer. And they would do a lot of, experiments and so forth to see the drive axles and all the drivetrains and so forth of cars, or, trucks and semis and so forth, and as well as tanks. And so they had a new engineer, master's degree from Purdue, and he shows up on the scene and starts barking orders because he's a supervisor. So he's going to be doing he's going to be designing the experiments the way they need to be done. And the guy's like, no, you need to talk to Chuck before you go do this experiment. He goes, well, I'm the one with the master's degree, blah, blah, blah. And so they run the experiment, it doesn't work. So he says, you really need to talk to Chuck. My dad's standing there. Right? My dad thinks so. And he goes, you really need to talk to him. He goes, no. He goes, we're going to do it this way. So he and remember, just see a board with all these integral calculus and stuff on the board. As an engineer, this stuff. Oh, yeah. And the guy's like, he tries it again, it doesn't work. So the guy's been on the job about a month or so, and he at the third time he goes, okay, Chuck, what am I doing wrong? And my dad went to the board, did a couple of calculations. He goes, you need to do it this way. They did it that way. The experiment worked, and the guy quit 2 weeks later. So this idea, this concept that we have in academia, that the PhD graduate, right, with no experience whatsoever except what they did in the lab, whatever the lab is somehow better qualified than somebody with 30, 40, 50 years of experience. And that's actually a problem when it comes to creating wealth and knowledge. I mean, you can see some very, very, very famous people, very wealthy people, don't have a PhD. They're not an MD. They're not a physician. And they've started, big companies, right?
Yep.
So for me, and I don't know if you want to start with how I got involved in all this stuff, but
yeah,
I won't start when I was a little boy, but I will. My parents took us to the Kennedy Space Center in 1968, and you
Oh,
could take a
wow.
bus out to the vehicle assembly building, which is where they built the Saturn V rocket. And this is in the 60s, so you could get out of the bus and walk around.
Right.
All right. You couldn't go in the building because of hazards, and you had to have a hard hat, and of course you had to be an adult.
Hmm.
And so here I am either at the ripe old age of 11, and I'm looking up at the Saturn V rocket that's going to take Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins to the moon. And I'm like, I think it would be cool to work at NASA. So all through high school and college, I wanted to go to medical school, but you have to have better grades than C's and C pluses and B minuses in chemistry, physics, and calculus. So I didn't go to medical school, but like I always wanted to be in medicine. So then when I started working on my MBA at the University of Dayton, I had gone to the Ohio State University,
Mm.
and my degree was in biological sciences. So I put all those things together with the MBA and started working at the Johnson Space Center in 1990. And I got there because when I was in graduate school, a very good friend of mine, he said, "Have you ever thought about life sciences?" And I'm like, "What's life sciences?"
Right.
Because I'm thinking of management and healthcare and so forth. I was
Mm.
working at the Air Force Base, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, in
Oh,
toxic hazards.
yeah.
So I got this job at the Johnson Space Center primarily because of this guy.
Mm.
And so when I got down there, I was down there maybe 9 or 10 months. I was working in the toxicology part of
Mm.
looking at the environmental monitoring of the International Space Station,
Mm.
called Space Station Freedom at the time.
Wow.
And then there was an opportunity for me to be the section supervisor of the medical care facility for the International Space Station.
Wow.
So I went over and did that. And then I had an opportunity to go to NASA headquarters in Washington to actually manage the money that was going to the Johnson Space Center.
Mm.
And so when I was at NASA, probably through most of the 1990s, there was an opportunity for me to write a strategic plan for telemedicine and remote healthcare, which I did.
Mm.
And one of the implementing steps was to create a commercial space center, which we created at Yale University. The PI and the director the PI was the chair of surgery. His name is Ron Merrill.
Mm.
And the NASA chief medical officer, Dr. Nick Agosian, insisted that they bring over a guy by the name of Rick Satava from DARPA.
Mm.
Rick Satava was responsible for developing the Da Vinci robot.
Oh, I'm unfamiliar with the Da Vinci robot.
The Intuitive Surgical has a Da Vinci robot where
Mm.
you basically are sitting at a console with your hands and you're manipulating surgical instruments from a distance.
Oh, wow.
So you're not actually in the same room as the patient.
Wow.
Which has huge potential. This again, remember, this is in the 1990s, right?
Yeah.
So I wrote the strategic plan. The grant was given to Yale, and then I was told I need to go to Yale to fix the problems that the physicians created. Now they weren't bad problems; they just wanted to manage, right?
Right.
And it's like that commercial for AT&T where the guy's looking at the tattoo and he says, that tattoo should say Donna, not Don, right? The guy's like, stay in your lane, bro. Right?
Yeah. Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, the guy doing the tattoos, like he's the one who said that. So anyway, I go up there, and within about 3 months or so, we move the entire institute, the entire center, from Yale to VCU in Virginia Commonwealth University in
Mm.
Richmond. So I'm there for a couple of years. We're building out this thing. We're doing things on Mount Everest. We're doing things in the jungle. We're doing remote healthcare. We're developing new technologies. Wow. We had one technology that you wore on your wrist like a watch, and then we called it the clammy meter. It told you where you were and whether you had, what your blood pressure, roughly might have been.
Yeah.
It's called a Fitbit today, but we did not, have any intellectual property on that one. So anyway, we did a lot of that, and then there was an opportunity to come to the University of Cincinnati and build the Center for Surgical Innovation.
Mm.
So I came here from Ohio, came home, and we built that center. And then I started working with NASA again on detail with the chief medical officer.
Mm.
And one of the things that we developed, well, I'm going to reach for this book, was this, we affectionately call it the Rosetta Stone. So you can see it's called Engineering, Life Sciences, and Health and Medicine Synergy. And where you have the three, so you can see the astronaut in the middle of those three concentric circles.
Mm.
And so we have engineer, a life scientist, and a physician, all with different opinions and different viewpoints,
Mm,
even different terminologies, right? I mean,
right.
they're all speaking English or German or Russian or Chinese or whatever,
Yep.
but those there's a conflict between that, right? So when I design something, I want to make sure that the human is in the system.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Alex, just interrupting the podcast real quick, just to give you a reminder. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast, whether you're listening on audio, watching in video, wherever you like. Please make sure you're subscribing and make sure to share it with a friend that actually is in love with space, right? Or maybe they're space curious. We love space curious people here. So would really appreciate the help doing that. It helps get the episodes and the podcast out to those people, and we can fight the algorithm and make sure that the people that really like space or are interested in it can see the podcast. So please make sure to do that. Thank you so much. Let's dive back in.
Now, Health and Medical Technical Authority became a big issue after the Columbia accident,
Right.
right? And there's very detailed reports about both Columbia and the Challenger accident, what should have been done, what could have been done, what didn't happen, and so on. And so this book, I presented this book to my vice president of research here at the University of Cincinnati about 6 or 7 years ago, and he then asked me if I would be the inaugural director of the Armstrong, of the Space Institute. It hadn't been named yet. So I did that, and I then asked Purdue for permission to use the Armstrong name. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get you have another university own your name, but I had to get permission. Right.
Yeah.
So for the last 5 years, we've done that, and so during this time period, I became the editor in chief of this journal, Telemedicine eHealth Journal, and I've written or edited 10 books, including this one on space physiology and medicine. As you can see, it's pretty thick. And we're in the process of working on the 5th edition right now.
Cool.
And I've written, almost 500 manuscripts, journal articles, federal reports, and so forth. I was a co-chair of the Federal Telemedicine Working Group for a number of years. Been the editor of that journal I showed you for now going on 21 years. So I found it's sort of like if I was a physician at NASA in the 1990s, I probably would not be at NASA now.
Right.
I mean, I'm not at NASA now. I mean, I'm retired, but after 33 years from working with them, because there's always conflict, right? Conflict between individuals based on belief or whatever ideology, whatever it might be. I was when we started the International Space Station, I wrote the charter with some other people and the actual language in the memorandums of understanding for the International Space Station program between the United States, Russia, Japan, Canada, and the European Space Agency. And so was the executive secretary for that group for a number of years, working with the chief medical officers. And there's only been a handful. So here's an example, is how does NASA develop medical policy? Well, let's look in the literature. Oh, there's nothing exists. Well, let's write it.
Right.
Well, I wrote it, right? It's that kind of thing where when something's missing from the literature, you can not embellish, but you can create knowledge where no one knows it exists. And so along the way, I started working with a woman named Sarah Lynn Mark, who's you probably talked with her. She was created SolaMed. She and I met, must be 1995 or so. And so she reached out about a year ago and she said, when I really ramp this up, would you be willing to serve as a chief operating officer? Sure, absolutely. So one of the things that we're coming up with here in the next, over a series of the next 6 months or so, or 7 months, is a series of roundtables on ethics in space, all right? So the question comes up is, who should fly in space? If you stand in front of people and say, I'm going to send 100 people to Mars on this mother of all rockets, that's a great strategy, but it's never going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years. Several reasons. One is approximately 50% of spacecraft on the way to Mars don't make it to Mars. So if you send people, you want them to make it, right? Well, let's assume they make it. We know that astronauts have problems with their eyesight over time. It's affected by microgravity. We're not entirely sure. There's research being done on, is it nutrition related? Is it,
Mm,
carbon dioxide? Is it,
mm,
is it something in the environment? What is it? Right.
right,
And so it affects more men than women, but we've flown more men than women.
right.
So if you now are on a fancy, what am I trying to say? A fancy Airstream trailer
Hmm.
size, like the size of a school bus
Yeah.
for 9 months, and you get to Mars, do you need a lens crafter?
Mm,
What happens if you die? Do you bury somebody on the other planet?
right.
There is in the International Space Station, there is a process for doing basic forensics if someone passes away,
Mm,
and then you put them in the human body containment unit. So, and this has
mm,
been written in the journals or in the scientific literature now. So the question from an ethics is like, can I tell you as a female astronaut that's 35 that you have to be on birth control for the next 5 years so you don't get pregnant in space? What if I have people who are of a different religion? People who are Jewish or Islamic have to be, there's certain burial rituals, certain
right.
things you have to do
Right.
before that person, can be buried. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. There could be a settlement on Mars in the next 100 years.
Mm,
So let's jump to say 2070. So,
right.
most of us won't be here. I know I won't be 120 years old, but I most likely will not be here. So you have this settlement, and the settlement will need that involves, I mean, it's only 50 years from now, so it may involve people being born there.
Right.
So do you need a cemetery? Do you need a grocery store? Do you need a fire department? Do you need a police department? Right?
Mm,
I asked somebody once why North America, specifically North America, Canada, and the United States, somewhat Mexico, of course, and some of the South American countries,
mm,
why the United States and Canada were so much more successful. And the response was the British brought their wives. Now, that sounds a little corny, but when you think about it, is that when society is about creating a new place to live,
mm.
whether you took the land from somebody else, there's that debate and there's that issue. We understand that.
Yep.
But people in general are migratory for thousands, tens of thousands of years.
Mm,
And so if we go and we set up a settlement, we want to have some structure, right? The forts, the U.S. Army's forts on the American West in the 1870s and 1880s, after
mm,
the Civil War, it was about protecting land routes for trade and for people going, west. They're trying to go
right.
to California, they're trying to go to Oregon, or whatever it might be. And so, there were the constant development of wars with the Indian tribes, the indigenous people, and so forth. And that's all part of American history.
Mm,
But it was initially just men, right? There weren't any women. And then when they did start bringing women, it was for, supporting the troops in a variety of different ways, of course. And then city states started to be built.
mm,
And when you need a city state, you need a cemetery. You need a collection of trash. You need a water treatment facility, right? So all these things are part of society.
mm,
But how does society move forward in a space-based economy on another planet? When you have, because you look up from Mars, you look at the Earth, and it's this little blue dot. Well, you can't tell it's blue unless you have a telescope,
right.
but you have this distance, right? So you have this
Yeah.
psychological
Yes.
impact. So that was a very quick, a lot of stuff I threw at you there.
I love it. It's asking the questions that I think need to be asked, and so it's this. So I call it. Well, there's this idea of the space conundrum, which is that we see all this progress in space, and just like the last space race, it comes with like societal chaos, the progress in space. I don't know why. It's not the point of the theory per se. Just to point out an observation that we're in the middle of that right now. And I don't know what the cause is or the effect, but it's there. And this last space conundrum, we've had this influx of private companies that are now progressing the space industry and enabling more access to space. In SpaceX's case, creating the mother of all rockets that could potentially send all those people and also be a habitat while it's there, which is a functionally great thing. But that's not the whole story. Like to your point, right? The engineering, that's the engineering solution. And
Well,
so, yeah.
engineers can, and I'll use an example at the university. So the engineers are talking about developing drones to deliver pizza.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll use pizza as an example, Domino's as an example, or
Right.
Papa John's or whatever.
Yeah.
So you have, or maybe it's Amazon or, or UPS or whatever. So I said to the guy, I said, okay, so you have, let's use a scenario or case study. We have a neighborhood of 500 people in Houston, Texas, and the Cincinnati Bengals are playing the Houston Texans in the Super Bowl. Unlikely, but let's say they are, right? And so of the 500 homes in this neighborhood, 150, 250 are watching the game. The other 250 families or households are out raking the leaves or playing in the yard or, whatever.
Yeah.
And of the 250 that are watching the game, they decide to order Domino's pizza at halftime. So we'll say 150 want to order pizza. And now 150 drones are delivering pizzas to these neighborhoods. And drones do not sound silent. They sound like dragonflies.
Yes.
And we as humans do not like that. I said, so have you ever thought about when you design this concept, do you think about what it has to do, how it impacts humans? No, we didn't really think about that.
Yeah.
I'm like, therein lies the problem, right? Engineers
Right.
can test things to destruction, right?
That's our job. Yeah.
I've had this iPhone now for probably, I don't know, maybe it's 3 years, and I finally dropped it in a little crack.
Yeah.
A little crack here, and you can't really see the cracks. But the point is that why is it designed, right? I mean, now you can get these phones where they unfold,
Right.
which doesn't seem like would last very long. But
No.
technology continues to evolve. But they're thinking about the human in the loop, right? Which is what NASA does with Health and Medical Technical Authority, while they're at the table with all engineering, so the seats are related.
Right.
There's a story. Dr. Korolev was the rocket engineer for the Soviet Union in the 50s. And so I used my water bottle as an example. So the rocket is sitting on the launch pad, and the cosmonaut needs to sit in the chair in a certain way, right? I mean, for XYZ,
Right.
so the XYZ
Right.
factors don't, in fact, impact their physiology or life. And so Dr. Korolev is like, this is what I'm doing. I only know a few Russian words, but anyway. So Dr. Barrere, who's a physician who trained under the Tsar's physicians, so this guy, this is in the 50s, he said, yes, but the cosmonaut needs to sit in the rocket in a certain way so as to not die. And he said, I must build a rocket. So we're not even on the same plane.
Right.
Right. And so when you have that, and it's not so much the case today, but with the Artemis program and with the medical care system that's going to go to the moon,
Right.
is the size of a backpack. But on the International Space Station, it's a pretty big, I mean, it's not huge, but they have a lot more capabilities. So, so if you think about in the 1950s, we launched animals into space.
Yep.
We launched a dog, Laika and Belka were the two dogs that the Soviet Union went up on Sputnik. And then we started launching humans on a capsule that would come back and land in the ocean. And then we said, well, why don't we build a space plane that can go up and come back and land? And so what are we doing now? We're putting people on a rocket. They're going to come in the ocean and they're going to bounce up and down until somebody rescues them. So in other words, we've made it faster, better, cheaper, maybe, as Dan Golden used to say with NASA, but we haven't changed the whole trajectory of space exploration. We're still focused on low Earth orbit. I'm not entirely sure that getting to Mars is in the next, I mean, we may be able to send a crew to Mars in the next, say, 5 to 10 years, maybe.
Right.
But it's going to involve a lot more money and a lot more political willpower.
Yes.
And if you think about political willpower, not to necessarily, bash the current leadership, but there is it's almost, and there's been several articles written about this in the scientific journals, that there's an assault on science, that we do not believe in vaccines, as an example.
Right.
We don't believe that wearing masks was efficient. This is all public health related.
Right.
We believe that because 6 women went up in space back in March or April, whenever it was, with Bezos's group,
Right.
that was a cool thing. It was cool,
Yeah.
but it was not. They didn't do any research. They were at 10 minutes. It's like going on a fast roller coaster or Space Mountain at the Animal
Yeah.
Kingdom.
Yeah, there was maybe 2 people that did any kind of like scientific experience. Maybe one that I know of, but
but you
to your
can't.
point, that's not the point of the trip.
Right. I mean, in the was it Jared Isaac or Isaac?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jared Isaac.
Isaacman, yeah.
When he went up a couple of was a year ago on SpaceX, and they went out to the Van Allen belts.
Yeah.
In suits that had never been tested.
Right.
And they opened the hatch, and I'm paraphrasing. I don't think this has happened. I'm king of the world in the Van Allen belts, which are radiation.
Right.
Right. So the radiation is on the suit, whether they're particles or whatever they are. You come back in, and then you repress it to 10.2, and what happens to those radioactive particles? They sublime into the atmosphere, and you inhale them. So the question, and again, I don't know if that's 100% true or not, but it'd be interesting to see the impact of those individuals in the next 20 to 40 to 50 years.
Definitely.
Whether their disease was, whatever their disease is or isn't, whether it was caused by that event.
Right.
But then again, you only learn by experimenting, right? Thomas Edison, is another Ohio native. He tried to develop a light bulb in 1,000 different ways, kept screwing up. But he finally invented the whole system, because it was a systems engineering perspective. He was able to develop that and provide enough material to create a light bulb, and then he lit the whole village up, and it was great. But he failed many, many times. And if you don't fail, you don't succeed.
Yeah.
And I think even Gene Kranz made that comment. Failure is not an option.
Right. Back
during the Apollo program, Apollo 13 specifically. And when we talk with him, he always, I think he's still alive. I'm not sure. I haven't
think so.
talked to him in a long time. I know they named the airport in Toledo after him, so that's a good thing. But at any rate, if you don't try, you can't succeed. And it's the same thing with everything in life.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, you keep going at it, right? You get knocked down, you get back up.
Yeah.
If you just throw your hands up and go, oh well, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Right. Well, it's so all your points are valid, and I do agree with you. I think it's an interesting perspective, because you've got. Well, let me ask this question to you. Between the start of the space shuttle and, let's say, 2011, when it was retired, do you think that NASA could have done more to progress forward, or was it stuck in a political bubble of funding and other things? Like, one of the things that I think, and this is going back to your failing and evolving and kind of the iterative approach, what you mentioned about Jared Isaacman, we're kind of doing Mercury and Gemini all over again, but with newer technology. Like, those people are actively putting themselves at risk to push the needle forward for the understanding of humans in space.
Right. Well, most of I don't know if every employee that developed the SpaceX rockets were former NASA engineers. I suspect they were, but many of them don't work there anymore. So that's something to.
There's been a lot of movement, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they don't like to work there anymore. I don't know. But if you look at the Space Shuttle program, the Space Shuttle program was designed and developed in the late 60s. And Nixon and Kennedy didn't necessarily get along. And so once the moon landings were completed, they said, well, we've done that, next, right? And so part of it is the willingness of Congress to put money in it and keep the money flowing and not change. So the Trump administration changed from what Biden did, and Biden changed what Trump did. Trump changed what Obama did, and so on. So if the prize is getting to Mars, or getting to the moon, getting to Mars, right? I can assure you, and I read this on CNN the other day, the Chinese Navy has more boats in the water than the United States does. Now, the lethality of those might be different, but that's just one, right? Then you have them building their own space station, and they're going to send lunar rovers to the moon,
Yep.
and so forth. We have private companies going to the moon. Their
Hmm.
spacecraft fell over, and these things happen.
Yeah.
But you can't have that happen with a human being. And
Right.
there were letters for Nixon to read if the astronauts were stranded on it,
Right.
and if Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin would have had to stay there,
Right.
and they'd still be there.
Hmm.
Um, he had a letter to write. So
Right.
we as a nation, or an amalgamation of nations, which is what the Earth is, we have a goal to explore. It's always been in our nature, right?
Mm.
You go back to the age of discovery in the 15th century. We went across the ocean. We weren't around. People went around the world to see what was out there for exploration. Yes, maybe to find spices.
Mm.
Yes, maybe to find gold. They brought with them disease. They brought with them arrogance and ignorance and so forth, and
Mm.
destroyed population. We know this because it's historical, right? We know going to Mars, there is a planetary protection officer, and it's his or her job to make sure we don't leave a bunch of trash behind,
Mm.
right? Which goes back to the question is, okay, in 2100, so let's say 2125, 100 years from now, there's say, I don't know, 500 people living on Mars, maybe 1,000, maybe even 10,000, and there's a mass, um, you know, infrastructure there. What do you do with the trash? I mean, is there a way of composting it, and then you have a cemetery, or is there a crematorium? That's just death, right?
Mm.
And then the whole idea of birth, right?
Right.
If you get pregnant, you can probably get pregnant in space, but can you carry the child to term, right?
Yeah.
And because the development of bones requires gravity, and if there's no gravity, or a sixth of it, a third of it, whatever gravity
They're going to
is,
develop differently. Yeah.
you might, and it's the same thing with the skull cap. When the baby's born and comes through the birth canal, these bones sort of fold over one another, and then they come back and then they fuse in the first year or so. I'm not a pediatrician, so I don't know that completely. But the point here is that if you think about these things, then how do we get there, right? So the rocket technology we have today is the rocket engines are much more powerful. I mean, the rocket that Elon Musk launched a couple of days ago or a week ago, whatever, was pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
But what about the environment? I'm writing a paper because I have heard many people at my university say, "Oh, we don't understand what you do in space has anything to do with public health." I'm like, okay, the rocket blows up on the pad and kills all the orange groves, manatees, crocodiles, gators, whatever, within 100 miles of Cocoa Beach in the Kennedy Space Center. Is that public health? Oh, I mean, exactly. Yeah, I think outside the box, right? There's many people who focus, right? I use another example. I love this example. It's kids. The kids really like it. Kids in the sense of college students, graduate students. They say, Professor, should I get a PhD? I said, well, if you're young, you probably should do it. Do I regret not getting one? Of course. But I'm not going to do it now.
Right. Right.
That's what I say. So you stand on the steps of the Washington, or of the Lincoln Memorial, and you look out and you see all the trees, the tourists, the cars. You hear the planes flying to National, the smells. That's a bachelor's degree.
Mm.
Then you decide to study the reflecting pool in front of you. Now you know where the water came from, the history of the pool, the concrete, where it was made, the joint compounds that separate the right, what lives in the water. That's a master's degree.
Mm.
Then you decide to study that little tiny insect at the very far left end or south end or whatever of the pool for 5 years, and now you know what? That's what you know, is you know a little bit about that bug.
Right.
That's all you know. You don't. Yeah. Are you better prepared to review materials and have a better understanding? Of course, you're a little smarter.
Yeah.
But that's what you're qualified to do.
Mm.
And so what we've done is try to build up in STEM education the foundation of children going into those educational fields, right? Math and engineering, medicine and so forth. And so those students who are going to build the rockets to go to Mars and the habitats and understand the anthropology and the human element of the psychological impact are probably 6 or 7 years old.
Right.
If they're even born.
What's going on, everybody? Alex coming in for one last interruption. Just to remind you that this podcast is brought to you by AG3D Labs. It's our idea workshop where we have a fleet of 3D printers that we help people bring ideas into reality, like literally physical 3D printed parts, and not just props or funny trinkets, functional parts, especially carbon fiber. So if you're interested in anything like that, please reach out to us at ag3d-printing.com. If you're a small business and you're looking to create a part so that you can go around, showcase it, say, here's my idea, here's a prototype, like, would you guys be interested in this? Maybe you can sell a few and make some extra cash. Maybe you can bring it to a meeting where you might get some funding. 3D printing enables so much, and that's what we love to do here at AG3D. So you can find the link in any of our social media. That's stan.store/AG3D Labs. We have a ton of digital services stuff that you can sign up. You can book some of our time so we can talk face to face. I can help you with 3D print challenges that you're having. Very simple, email back and forth, send some images, videos. I'll give you your next best step. Then, of course, if you're trying to find your first 3D printer, we can help with that too. So a bunch of different options, a bunch of different ways that we can help, from you're a very beginner to you've got 3D printers and you're running a business, and everything in between. So make sure to check that out. And then, of course, sign up for our newsletter at ag3d-printing.com. Check out the blog. We're going to have more projects coming out, but just want to let you know that we got a lot going on. I know we're editing my first book on 3D printing, which is wild, and we're building an AI as well for 3D printing. So there's a lot going on. Stan.store/AG3D Labs, the best way to keep in touch with us. So make sure to check that out. Let's get back to the show. Thank you.
Right. And so this, we can accelerate. I mean, this device here, not this particular iPhone, this is an iPhone 13, is only about 16 years old.
Yeah.
Because Thomas Friedman wrote in his book, Thanks for Being Late, in 2007. I don't know, I guess the book came out in 2010. The most important thing that came out of 2007 was the iPhone. So it was a thinking by Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, to look at things in a different way. I remember we met with Steve Wozniak and he told us, the whole development of that, right? So if you think about space exploration and DoD funding, right, the new jet aircraft, new uniform design, new policies come from government funding because of a need.
Yeah.
Now, today, the need is still there, but now companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are beginning to push the envelope with technology that was already developed in the 1950s and 60s. In the 1950s, there were rocket designs that would bring a rocket back down and would land. I mean, the
concept's not new.
Right. So none of that's new.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'll use the laparoscopic surgery as another example. So I mentioned the Da Vinci robot, right? So you can cut somebody from left to right across the abdomen. It's called the chevron. And you can open them up, basically split them in half and work on the bowels, the pancreas, or whatever it is. And now some of these procedures can be done through the belly button.
Which is crazy.
With a probe, right?
Yeah.
And so that concept of laparoscopic surgery was developed in the 1920s. So, but the hole was this big, right? If you have a hole this big in the abdomen, you can stick your hands in, that's not laparoscopic surgery. But the camera was this big, right?
Interesting.
So the other model I always tell the students, I ask them, I said, this has nothing to do with space, although it could be related. If I have a catalog, because it's Christmas time, so people are buying the holiday gifts and so forth. So people are you have a catalog, you look at the catalog, you find something you like, you order it on the telephone, and it comes to your house. What year is it? What year do you think it is?
Oh, the phone?
Yeah, and you order it from a catalog, and it comes to your house.
I would assume that year.
No, I mean not when it comes, but when was that concept developed?
Well, when was the concept developed? Oh, yeah. I would go back probably 3 years, but it's probably longer than that.
1879. Sears and Roebuck. Right? So this idea, right? So the idea itself has not changed. Amazon uses the same model, right? In the 1960s, 70s, 80s, probably into about maybe late 70s, early 80s, computers were in large rooms with, big fans. The floor was elevated to cool it down and so forth. And
Mm.
somebody says, let's put a laptop or a desktop on your desk and put all the software on your computer. So I took a class when I was at Ohio State in medical terminology. And we went to the library. They had these big dot matrix printers with a keyboard,
Mm.
and it was wired to the wall, which was wired to the mainframe computer.
Mm.
So then somebody says, let's put the software on your computer so it's where you are. Like I'm sitting at my desktop. I have two monitors. I'm working on my laptop. I have a desktop at the office. And then so now somebody's like, well, let's put all the software in the cloud, and all you have is a dumb terminal.
Right.
So we went like this. Right? Same thing with the UPS, Land's End, LL Bean, whatever those things are. And all that really started because of this device here
Right.
in 2007, right? So I'm not entirely sure that in the next 15 to 20 years, we won't be farther along in space exploration,
Mm.
but it's going to require a lot more knowledge, a lot
Mm.
more money for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yep.
And it also is going to require a lot of standards. So I'll use
Mm.
SolaMed as an example. This group of roundtables is really designed to maybe come up with a set of standards or recommendations that all companies should follow.
Right.
There are no standards or anything right now on selection.
Mm.
NASA has selection standards which now outfacing to the public,
Mm-hmm.
developed, after 70 some years of doing this.
Right.
And some of these companies are like, we'll just fly people because they're millionaires. They go through very, very few weeks of training. They're obviously somewhat healthy, but we don't know any underlying conditions. So part
Right.
of what these roundtables are is who should fly? How do
Mm.
we know? I mean, you go to an amusement park and you get on a ride. It says if you have back problems, you have high
Yep.
blood pressure, neck problems, do not ride.
Mm-hmm.
Ride at your own risk, right?
Right.
Well, how do we know that somebody doesn't get in a spacecraft and they're 6 months out and they freak out
Yeah.
and then they have a nervous breakdown or they become violent or I mean, or they become claustrophobic. So when you go up into a spacecraft that goes up and comes down 10 minutes later, you might feel claustrophobic, but they can give you some meds so they can
Mm.
talk you down.
Right.
But when you're gone for months,
Yeah.
you can't see your family, you can't see your spouse. So those roundtable will help us understand more of that
Yeah.
than we already do, right?
Yeah.
So you have with SolaMed, you have a collection of individuals that are probably second only to NASA itself
Mm.
because of the number of people with NASA backgrounds. We have astronaut, we have flight
Mhm.
surgeons, we have the bioethicist that was with NASA
Mm.
for many years. We have an advisory group, the stack and the seat, and it's all about pushing the envelopes of some of these commercial companies. Now I've seen many, 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 many companies prop up. We want to
Mm-hmm.
build this. We want to do this. We want to do that.
Right.
So you look back at early, and I use this as an analogy, early aviation. In early aviation, the flight attendants were nurses and everybody had a parachute. And then they jumped it, and it was really more for the wealthy. Like if you
Right.
didn't have any money, you were not flying on the Hindenburg.
Right.
You probably didn't want to fly it on anyway, but right, because it ended up crashing in New Jersey. But the point here is that you couldn't fly if you were poor
Mhm.
or middle class.
Mhm.
It sounds terrible, but that's the way it was. Well, then after World War II, commercial aviation took off, right? Delta Airlines is celebrating its 100th year. United's been around a long time. American's been around a long time. Some of the airlines, they're gone. Eastern, Pan Am, Northwest, US Air, Allegheny Airlines, and so forth. There none of those exist anymore.
Right.
And so the point here is that you went from that they're still safety conscious. That's not what I'm trying to say, but they were very limited on who could fly
Yep.
based on money,
Mm-hmm.
which is what the space industry is like right now. And
Yeah.
then it grew till you had all these airports everywhere. Well, now there's work at the Glenn Research Center to create new knowledge and new capabilities for hydrogen-powered aircraft,
Mm.
which means you have to redesign the airport, right?
Yes.
The Airbus, the two-level Airbus that came out, I forget the number of that. It's a 388 or something like that.
Mm.
Is a double-decker plane, not just like a 747, where
Right.
only the front of it's double-decker. The whole plane's double-decker.
It's
which
crazy.
means you have to redo the airport. Now, again, it can only land at certain airports,
Right. Right.
right? So, I mean, but that's a growth opportunity, right?
Yes.
When you start throwing in robotics and AI and new designs, new materials,
Mm,
new fuel additives, then you start being able to get to achieve what the goal is, right?
yeah.
But the more we do things, here's another example. There's companies that make radar guns for police cars.
Hmm.
They also make on a different line radar detectors,
Yes.
right? So here you have an example. It's like the more we build out, the more the Chinese, the North Koreans, the Iranians, uh, even homegrown terrorists are trying to figure out how do we break the bank or how do we,
Right.
uh, and that's why Trump created Space Force, right? I mean, Space
Mm,
Force is about looking at the dangers that are out there about satellites. So I just reviewed a manuscript for the journal. Some people in Germany wrote this article comparing different satellite, for healthcare, specifically for healthcare. But
mm,
if everything we do is solely based on electrical power, the internet, and computer storage,
hmm.
and all that goes down, we can't do anything, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when you have an ice storm, I mean, you've lived through ice storms in Boston. We've
Hmm.
certainly had it here in Ohio, where the grocery stores are closed for 2 or 3 days. Now,
Yep.
most people have canned goods or
Yeah.
boxed goods. They can fix
It's
food or whatever. No
it's
one's,
bread and milk here. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. Well, I mean, look what happened during COVID. I mean, you go to Home Depot and say, I just need to buy some toilet paper. Don't have any.
Yep.
Don't have any hand sanitizer. I mean, why people hoarded toilet paper? I mean, COVID doesn't give you diarrhea. But anyway,
No. No.
so the point here, and I guess I mean, I've talked way too much. I don't know how much of this other stuff you want to get to. I'm looking at some of these questions.
Yeah. So I want to stop there because I did have some thoughts. So it's so interesting to hear it from your perspective because as an engineer, all of our disciplines, we have a window of looking at it and things that we need solved or taken care of in order for us to succeed long term. And like we're at this, it's a nexus point of finally, hopefully, pushing us further into space and having humans live and work in space, which is a really amazing concept. But and what you're adding here is the complexity of the work that needs to be done. So I love that you guys at SolaMed are doing these roundtables because, and I don't mean this, I hope this is taken the right way, but if you consider NASA the top and the government the top, SolaMed is trying to, with these roundtables, lead from the bottom, which I think as an employee, as someone who's a coworker, there's many opportunities for us to lead from the bottom, right? We may not have the authority, but we have the ability to still, at the ground level, get that information out there, right? And then
Absolutely.
hopefully it gets to the top and you can have major influence. And that's what I'm very excited that you guys are doing this, is that the opportunity is here. There is now money going into space, a lot into getting stuff into space, but the money is finally coming in a lot of different ways, and the interest is finally there. With China and the moon,
Yeah.
there's resources now that are in play. So we have this, soup of opportunity that's finally rich enough that all of the parties at play might be going into it. Um, it's interesting to see it from your perspective because for me, how I saw the last 20 years, but really like space shuttle, 40 years of being used, of building us a new space station, of giving us the Hubble Space Telescope, of really pushing living in space so that we get great data, right?
Right.
From the human beings that are up there. NASA starts having women involved and we start getting more international astronauts and people from around the world up there so that our data pool starts growing. But when I look back, and I've been learning this more about history, the idea of Kennedy and getting us to take the moonshot against the Russians, it wasn't an engineering or a medical like it was a political decision, and it was a cultural decision from
Right.
the
And
president, you know?
yeah, but when he made his speech at Rice, he talked
Yeah.
about we do these things because they are hard.
Yes.
And I think, it'll be the number one thing of this generation, of this time period. And it's true. I mean, it was politically motivated. I mean, when you have, and I remember talking to one of the flight surgeons who's got to be maybe close to 90 years old now,
Mm,
grew up in Kansas,
mm.
and he remembers seeing Sputnik fly over
That
out in
must
the
have
planet
been
because it was the
wild.
only thing up there, right? It was the
Yeah.
only thing in space. And now when you look at space, there's all kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
So part of it is that if you have the ability to launch a rocket, then you can launch a nuclear weapon,
Yes.
and that's what really why the space race started. Now, if you think about people like, well, why do we need the space race? So in that movie, First Man with Ryan
Yes.
Gosling plays Neil Armstrong, and well, Neil Armstrong's passed away, but I've talked with his son quite
Mm.
a lot, and I used to talk with him occasionally by email. But when they were doing this back in the 1960s, there were protests. You know, Whitey's going to the moon and we're starving, right? Whitey's going to the
Yep.
moon because it was all white, Caucasian race, right?
Yep.
Which is ridiculous because there were a lot of other people working on that as well. There was only one woman in mission control.
Mm.
That's actually portrayed in several movies. But today it's much
The
different.
Poppy Northcutt? Is that?
I forget her name. Yeah,
Yes, I think that's
very
her
early
name. Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And so the Nixon administration said, how can we use the space-based technologies to improve healthcare, as an
Mm.
example, for Americans? So
Mm.
that's where the StarPac program, Space Technology Applied to Real Public Advanced Healthcare. And
Mm.
that's where telemedicine began to be really
Wow.
moved forward, right? So NASA was the first agency, first federal agency to really embrace this back in the late 50s and
Mm.
60s, early 60s. It wasn't the DoD. DoD didn't do any telemedicine until
Right.
1990, but they
Wow.
have a bigger pocketbook, so
Yes. Yes.
they have more voices, right? And so the idea here is how do we utilize the technology to enable the American population to be better off,
Mm.
right? So a lot of things came out of the space program, a lot of medical technologies, a lot of, one would say Velcro, Tang, all that kind of stuff, right?
Mm.
But we know that that's also enabled people around the world to be able to gain access to information. So you
Mm.
can literally be in the middle of nowhere and get access to information, whether you're
Right.
Google searching something or whether you're going to PubMed or WebMD or whatever it is. All these things have occurred in part because of the space program, in part because of U.S. federal funding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that allows these smaller companies, which are now big companies, SpaceX, Blue Origin, to
Yep.
really begin to build out a strong business model.
Mm.
The problem is, as soon as something bad happens, that business model is going to go up in flames, right? Worked with Dr. J.D. Polk, who's the chief medical officer of NASA, the MISAP manual. So what happens if
Mm.
something occurs?
Yep.
They have a lot of robust activities, but like there's a quad agency working group, the NTSB, the FAA, Space Force, or
Mm.
the Air Force, and NASA, or DoD. And so what you have is you have the NTSB doing the investigation, the FAA licensing people to fly into space.
Mm-hmm.
NASA doesn't need to get FAA's approval to build a rocket and go into space, but
Mm.
commercial companies do.
Right.
So, but there's no standard. So SpaceX
Right.
may have one approach to certifying their people who fly,
Mm-hmm.
and then Blue Origin, Sierra, Axiom, other companies may
Yep.
be different.
Yep.
But the International Space Station program allowed these 5 international partners, which is 4 countries and one large group of countries in Europe, to
Right.
work together on common areas for common capabilities, right?
Mm.
Common standards of medical care, medical selection, crew surgeon selection, crew surgeon
Mm.
certification, all these things and the amount of material we've gained is tremendous. But are we now going to allow these other companies to gain data and not share it with others? And
Yes.
not because what happens if something occurs, like if SpaceX launches a rocket off of 39A and
Mm-hmm.
it blows up, is SpaceX on the front page or is NASA on the front page? It's on the Kennedy Space Center.
Yep.
NASA had nothing to do with it unless there's a NASA astronaut on board.
Yeah.
There's all SpaceX commercial company astronauts that are not NASA employees or NASA astronauts, and it's not related to NASA, but it's on the Kennedy Space Center, right?
Right.
And so if you now jump into the future and say, well, we didn't follow those guidelines, and the court, the jury's going to go, well, why not?
Mm-hmm.
If there were standards for you to follow, you didn't embrace them,
Yeah.
and you had this accident, and now you're culpable,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, it's not a cavalier kind of Wild West kind of thing, but it's an emerging economy
Mm-hmm.
that has a lot of challenges in front of it,
Right.
but the barriers, the fence rail is really low
Yeah.
because Congress set it low,
Yeah.
allow it to emerge.
Sure. No, so you bring up tremendous points, and it's the aspect that the engineering side doesn't often bring up, and NASA was not immune to disaster, right?
No.
I mean, in a lot of ways, the decline of NASA is due in part to Columbia and Challenger. Like, there's no doubt that was a huge, not only in maybe how much funding and how much risk people were willing to take on human spaceflight, but it was also a big problem for our message, right? The space shuttle was such an iconic thing, and when those two incidents, which when you consider how many flights of the shuttle there were and how many astronauts and human beings were sent into space, it's small, but you know, it's a different beast, right? A private company is going to have very different incentives than NASA, than a government agency.
Yeah, it's going to be a profit center. If you think about, since 1950, 1960, we'll say,
Yeah.
so almost 70 years, there's been about 700 people flown in space. That's 10 per year. If you think about that, there were 700 people. There were 7 million people flew on airplanes last weekend for Thanksgiving, right? So that, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't 7 million, but my point here is that
a lot.
It's significantly larger, right? So by the time we get to 7 million people flying in space, we also have to understand what it means to be a human being on another planet or in space. And what does it mean what have we done to the Earth? We've already kind of screwed the Earth a lot anyway because of global warming. Maybe it's a natural phenomenon. Maybe it's caused by man or humans. But the point here is that if we have spaceports all over the place launching rockets over populated areas, like the Kennedy Space Center launches into the ocean, I mean over the ocean, right?
Right.
French Guiana, they launch over the ocean, right?
Yep.
They want to build a spaceport in in England. It's going to go over, the Earth.
Right.
By the time it gets into space, I mean, once it's in space, it's not a problem. But if you're launching it from
unless you're China,
right?
Unless you're China,
right? And so here we have this issue that Americans in general care about the environment, care about food safety and all the things that are sort of being thrown out the door, if you will, because of what's going on in this current administration. They're not, like, let's make everything unsafe. They're questioning things, which you have to question all the time. You have to question things and make sure that we're doing things the right way. But I think eventually when we have people flying into space on a regular basis. So up at Ohio State, they're developing Starlab, which is the next generation of space stations that will replace the International Space Station, which in and of itself is going to be brought down, pushed out of orbit 2031, 2032, which in and of itself would be a spectacular thing.
It'll be an event.
I'm sure that people will be injured from that. But with Starlab, they're going to have a lot of AI. They're going to have a lot of capabilities. And so they have a partnership with the Hilton Hotels. So I asked the guy from the Hilton Hotels when I was up at a meeting in March, I said, what about housekeeping? If you go to a hotel now and, you sleep in a bed, the bed has to be clean, the sheets have to be clean. They're the people who leave things in the trash can. You can use a wild imagination, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you address that? First of all, you don't sleep on a bed in space. You can sleep in something.
Like
but if you're hooking up with your wife or your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, there's that, right? Yeah. Humans will be humans. And so they're like, oh, well, we haven't thought about that. I'm like, you better start thinking about it, because these are issues that are going to become problematic if you don't solve it now.
Yeah.
Right. SpaceX launches people into off the Kennedy Space Center. No NASA astronaut. It dumps in the ocean, and it's bobbing up and down. The capsule bobbing up and down. The astronauts are, the crew members are still alive, and the fishing boat of opportunity that's catching lobster or
Mm,
cod or whatever goes off Nova Scotia. They're going to approach because that's human beings want to help one another, and
right.
so they help these astronauts the whole time breathing in monomethyl hydrazine, and every one of them is dead within 24 hours.
Mm,
Whose responsibility is that? 5, 6, 7 years ago, the people from the FAA were like, or the NTSB, they were like, oh, we haven't thought about that yet. I'm like, just because
yeah.
Congress says go and do commercial, there are many problems that have to be addressed as you move along,
Mm,
right? You don't just build a car and say, it's going to produce a lot of obnoxious gases. So let's put a muffler on it, make it sound good.
yeah.
Let's put a catalytic converter on it. I mean, these things occur after the fact as things develop and move forward. And I think in space exploration, you're going to see the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I have so much respect for Dr. Mark and yourself and the fact that you guys are trying to push the envelope here in the ways that you can, right? Because there's so much, I mean, it's it's such a weird place that the space industry is in, right? It's not even that old, right? 60 years, right?
Yeah, six, seven
Like
decades, not very long.
not very long, and it's it's in this place where you have such institutional knowledge, like 50, 60 years of sending humans to space, and at the same time we still have so much that we have to do before we even get to a place where we
Right.
can do that. And yeah, it's at least with the private thing, in a lot of ways it's like fighting the same age old problem of a private enterprise of any kind, right? The first car, the wheels were killing people, and then the seatbelt eventually got developed. Like, I'm glad that there are folks out like yourselves that are trying to push the envelope now before we have some kind of an incident that puts the brakes on everything.
Oh, well, the incident's coming. You
Mm.
can almost guarantee that. To illustrate this point, in 1903, the Wright brothers flew the airplane at Kitty Hawk. The first three flights, further and further. The
Hmm.
fourth flight they were getting ready to do, the plane flipped over. So on the day they flew the airplane was also the day they had a first mishap, right?
Yeah.
That was 1903.
Yeah.
66 years later, we were walking on the moon. That's like 50 some years ago.
It's
So if
crazy.
you think about how aviation itself, and remember, the Wright brothers set all the speed records in Europe because we
Mm.
in the United States thought it was a circus act.
Yes.
What are you going to use an airplane for? Well, you can drop things from it like mail. And then
It's one of
somebody
my
goes, well,
best
you can
examples.
drop
Yeah.
bombs, right?
Right.
And even when Alan Shepard went up, Scott Carper and Alan Shepard, the first group of astronauts,
Yeah.
when they went up, I think it was Scott Carpenter, when he was going, he was when he was flying around doing his orbits, he saw a train going into a tunnel, and he told the mission control that, and he's like, no, he can't see anything from space. You're an astronaut. You're not an engineer. You're not. We're not even sure why you need a window, right? And that,
Right.
that was a big debate at Woods Hole back in the late '50s,
Hmm.
where the physicians insisted there be a window so they could look out. Oh, engineers like they're not going to be able to do anything. So when
Well,
he
that's
got
like
back,
that scene in The Right Stuff. And I don't know if it's true, but the whole "we're the monkey"
yeah,
debate. Like, that's one of my favorite
yeah,
moments
I think it's
in it.
probably embellished, but yeah, I'm sure
Sure.
it's that, right?
The story of it is great, though.
Right. But so they open, they get back and they look he says, no, check the time log of the train. And sure enough, he could see a train.
It's
Then they
crazy.
realized, oh, you can see things because we didn't have a lot of spy satellites at the time.
Right.
In fact, the very first satellite, Telstar, was used to do robotic telesurgery. So Dr. DeBakey in Houston, he was in Switzerland, and they did a surgical procedure there, but linked it back to Houston so people could watch it.
Wow.
So the concept of healthcare and satellite technology has been enormous because of NASA. But you can
Mm.
go back to smoke signals and marathon runners in antiquity
Mm.
about healthcare and communications. But the point here is that we're in an accelerating time now where technology is just I mean, like we were doing some stuff at Best Buy the other day, and the guy's like, "You need a new iPhone 17 Pro." I'm like, "Why? What's wrong with this one?"
Right.
Right?
I,
Except it's cracked,
I
right?
have the same phone, so.
Yeah. And so it's like, what's wrong with it, right? And so we have this insatiable desire to have things. Now,
Hmm.
would it be cool when my grandkids? I have two grandkids right now. One is 8, one is 5. She'll be
Hmm.
5 in a couple of weeks, couple of days. When they're in their 40s, they want to go to the moon for the weekend. That's possible. It wasn't possible in 1960,
Yeah.
not right? It
Dreamt
wasn't
of.
possible at all.
Dreamt of. But
It
yeah,
was,
not
yeah.
possible.
But
Yeah.
even I don't know. Have you ever read the book? This book was written by Werner von Braun in
Hmm.
1949. It's called, oh gosh, it's about a Mars colony. I can't remember the name of the book all of a sudden.
Oh,
It-
yes. I haven't read it, but I'm aware of it.
Do you know who the person in charge of the Mars colony is?
Elon?
Elon,
Yeah,
right?
I've heard of this. Yeah.
So, so it's kind of creepy when you think of
It's
Elon.
creepy.
Yeah, he was born in the 60s. So, and
Yeah.
then of course the term space medicine came out of Hubertus Strughold, who was they were both Nazi scientists.
Mm.
And Eisenhower did not like the fact that we had these Nazi scientists building rockets, which is why the Russians got to space first, because he didn't trust. Because remember, all of our rockets get blown up on the pad. They go up
Yes.
and blow up sideways or whatever.
Yeah.
And when Wernher von Braun they finally listened to him, then we started building the Saturn V rocket,
Mm.
which never failed. There were failures, but the rocket
Right.
itself didn't fail,
Struck by lightning. Yeah, right?
right? And
Yeah.
then Apollo 13, and because I mean, I'm excited about Artemis 2 mission coming up here,
Yes.
probably maybe in early sometime in 2026, where the astronauts will fly around the moon.
Mm.
Um, and you hope and pray that nothing bad happens to any of
Of
these
course.
commercial companies.
Yeah.
But 135 shuttle flights, you know, the odds are 1 in 25. So we'll see
Yeah.
what happens with SpaceX. I mean, you saw at Baikonur one of the
Yes.
infrastructures collapsed, so they can't launch rockets now,
Yep.
and they don't have the money, really don't have the money to
They haven't
rebuild
had the money
anything.
there in a long. They've been taking money out of there for a long
Right.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's the same thing with
Mm.
space exploration. Space exploration during the Apollo program, I think, was 1% of the budget, like
Mm.
that.
Yep.
When Kennedy, first approved or signed off on the budget. Now it's not even. It's like 0.005. I mean, very
Yeah.
small. I mean, we're talking about 18, $19 billion, and then you've got what is his name, Sean Duffy, saying, "Oh, we should move it into the Department of Transportation." It's like, no. I
No.
mean, NASA does things on new aircraft design, on space exploration, space ferrying goods and services up, and launching satellites can be done by multiple companies.
Mm.
Doesn't have to be NASA any longer.
Right.
That's probably something that they could maybe spin off and buy services, which is what the commercial program is for.
Right.
But if, like when the shuttle retired, the only way you could get to space was on the Soyuz. So
Right.
the price went up.
Yep.
Now there's no Soyuz being launched because of the platform has been
Yeah.
damaged. So the only way to get supplies is on SpaceX.
Which, if
Price
Obama
will
had
go
not focused on that and
right,
had the funding allocated to create 2 spacecraft,
right.
it
Well,
wouldn't have happened.
right, and the Boeing Starliner is probably. I don't know that it's going to go away, but it's
No.
possible it's not going to be. But then you only have the one. Although I saw Blue Origin has a pretty decent looking rocket that was launched, and so
Yeah.
it's conceivable. But again, when you sit back and you think about, and I'll use salary as an example,
Mm.
I mean, to make Elon Musk the first trillionaire is ridiculous. I mean, first of all, uh, you have people like the Ford Foundation, the Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation. There are no foundations from these rich people. There's no Elon Musk, thing. I mean, and that's fine. I mean, he chooses not to do that. But the point here is that if you look at Amazon's model,
Hmm.
the company Amazon,
Yeah.
and he's a billionaire because he started out by selling books
Yeah.
out of a warehouse instead of out of a bookstore.
Yeah.
Then he put a bookstore in Manhattan. I think it's on Fifth Avenue somewhere.
Mm.
And then you have companies that, like, if I want to buy a pair of blue jeans, like Levi's, right?
Yeah.
I can go to Walmart, Target, Kohl's, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, or I can order them online. And by the way, they're not exactly the same product.
Right.
If you buy something from Amazon, doesn't necessarily mean it says Levi's on it, but it may not be exactly the same quality as you get at
In the
Macy's.
store.
Right?
Yep.
So you buy that. Like I just bought a new Weber grill, gas grill.
Mm.
My other one's 20 years old, so it's supposed to be here today or tomorrow. So it'll give me something to do in the snow. Right? Um, and it was like I think it was $6.99 on sale for $5.99,
Mm.
and I got 2 gift cards from my kids for my birthday, which was a couple weeks ago.
Happy birthday.
So thank you. And so you could buy that Weber grill at Home Depot, at Lowe's, at True Value Hardware, um, there's different hardware stores around your city and so forth. But you could order online, and
Mm.
the price is all the same. But some things you buy from Amazon are 10, 20, $30 cheaper.
Mm.
And but the guy's still making money hand over fist. So it makes you wonder
Yeah.
why Macy's costs so much money. Why
Mm.
Target is costing, right? Is a part of it is, like if I fly on a spacecraft that looks a lot like a military aircraft, where you're sitting in a netted seat, like on
Mm.
an aircraft carrier or on a C-130, or I want to sit in a nice, comfortable Delta One, flying to Europe in the first class where my thing goes down, I can sleep, and I have a big pillow, and that's not going to be commercial space flight's not going to be like that. Maybe it may be like that initially, but eventually it'll be like it's a Greyhound bus, like a get on an airplane now.
Right.
It's not uncomfortable. Well, I mean, it can be uncomfortable, but it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's tried and true. I mean, you're safer to fly than you are to walk on Fifth and Broadway,
Or even
and
drive on the highway. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
especially on Interstate 95.
Yes.
But anyway, there's a whole bunch of other stuff here. Did you want to talk about, or are you?
I would love to kind of
going?
encapsulate this because I think we've talked about a ton of stuff, and if you're up for it, I would just love to have you on more often. I think
Yeah, sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to have the discussions here on the podcast that are not necessarily happening within all of these companies. I know people at SpaceX, at Blue Origin, at Rocket Lab, at all these different places within NASA that listen to this. So if we can provide those conversations to push things forward, I am always up for it. So
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important part of any human spaceflight program is to make sure that you were protecting the crew that's going abroad, going up and doing whatever they're doing. If they're living on the space station, we want to make sure they're protected, that they can live a somewhat normal life. I mean, obviously,
Mm.
When you're in space for a year, it's not a normal thing,
right.
but it's comfortable.
Mm.
Rather than, you don't want to be on an airplane sitting out of the window with 105 fever, thinking, oh, I got kidney stones, I'm going to die,
Yeah.
and not know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
But at least that plane can divert and land if you had to.
Right.
And I've been on plenty of planes coming back from Moscow where you'll come across and you'll watch on the screen, you watch, and all of a sudden the plane goes and lands in Nova Scotia. They drag somebody up.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been on flights before where they'll ask, one time we were coming back from Germany, and they said, are there any physicians on board? And I'm surrounded by these NASA flight surgeons. They also go, I'm a physician. And one of them was Mike Baird, who's one of our NASA astronauts. They actually helped somebody. I don't know what was going on. But there was another company. It's out of Arizona called, what's it called? Not MedStar. Anyway, they do a lot of medical stuff for airlines.
Mm.
They have a call center. And I was in the call center once, and they have all these monitors, like Hollywood Squares, these big monitors, right? And there was a plane flying from London to Dubai, yes, which is like an 8-hour flight. It's a long flight. And they, about halfway through the flight, some 18-year-old kid in the back started foaming at the mouth. They weren't sure. Was he drunk? Was he having a seizure? They didn't know. Right. And so the flight attendant was able to get him laying down in the on the aisleway. And they were able to address him, but they were able to talk with these people in Arizona to do through a telemedicine link to diagnose and do whatever treatment they could have. Because they have defibrillators on board, they have insulin, they have different medications and so forth. And this company makes those kits for them.
Mm.
And so we want to be able to do the same thing if you have a problem in a commercial space flight.
Mm.
You know, it's on Blue Origin, it was up and down. So they probably had a first
Right.
aid kit, you know, a Band-Aid. I have no idea what the first aid kit was like.
Right.
But if you're going to be up in space for 2-3 weeks or months, you need to have advanced medical care.
Definitely.
And if you have advanced medical care on the way to Mars, you know, this bottle, I mean, these happen to be, you know, 5 tablets of Advil,
Mm.
right? Uh, is it going to be good in 3 years?
Right.
I mean, if it says it expires on the 31st of December of 2029, it'll probably be good in 2032, but we don't
Right.
know that,
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
right? And
Well,
so,
it is also the aspect, right? Like certain things that work on Earth don't work well in orbit. Isn't an EpiPen technically dangerous in zero
right. Well,
G?
here's why. So you see this bottle of water, you can see where the ice is right here by my finger. And
Right.
you can see if this was a full bottle where my hand is down,
Mm.
there's no air in it.
Right.
But I have a dipstick, like an albuterol inhaler, and when I press on that, I get a metered dose,
Mm.
right? Over time, what will happen is that this liquid will now create a bolus, so you'll have a hole in the middle of
Oh.
air. So when you spray Cepacol or um, Windex or whatever it is, you get a meter dose, perfume, meter
Mm.
dose. It's the same amount, always comes out.
Mm.
So in 1991, we did an experiment on the Vomit Comet, which is a plane that
Yeah.
flies like this, right? And I was vomited, so you know I did a picture between this.
True to
But my
form.
role was so I had glass separatory funnels. So your separatory funnel is an oval. If you have chemistry, you probably remember
Mm.
it's got a little valve at the bottom with a long glass stem. And so I would spray. So I had all the albuterol inhalers in a foam row numbered.
Mm.
And so the first, and we did 40 parabolas. So each parabola, I think I was able to spray two or three bottles right into the separatory funnels.
Yeah.
And so the idea was that some were full, some were half full, some were eighth full, or you know, like almost a quarter full.
Mm.
And so we were then measuring the material that actually came out to determine whether this was in fact true,
Right.
right? And so that demonstrated right there you couldn't use that. You had to be full. So EpiPen wouldn't work. It had to be one use only. Right?
Oh.
And they have syringes up there as well.
Right.
And so that allowed me then to do that. We did an evaluation. We then shipped the separatory funnels to SmithKline in North Carolina. We went over and did the analysis.
Mm.
Another paper that never got written up because the pharmacist that was in charge, PharmD, I don't know, he just didn't like to write. But it demonstrated because we had done this with Cepacol containers. So we went to the drugstore, bought Cepacol containers, full, half full, and you could see the liquid. There's pictures of this somewhere
Mm.
where you don't have that. So this idea is like, oh, well, we're just going to fly these people in space. It's like you got to go back and look at what we've already done, right?
Right.
And a lot of times people either don't want to look in the past, they don't believe in the past.
Mm.
Like one guy, his name, the guy I was telling you about in Kansas,
Yeah.
his name is oh God, what's his first name? Craig Fisher. He was the one responsible for creating and developing the place where they brought the moon rocks back so that there would be contamination.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was basically at a meeting. This is probably in the late 1990s, early 2000s.
Mm.
And a lot of young engineers were saying, "Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that." And he started talking, and I'm like, "Who the heck is this guy?" Right? And basically said, "You're all full of it, right?"
Yeah.
He said, "If you look back at what we did for the Apollo program for the quarantine facility in Building 37,
Mm.
oh, well, we have better technology today." I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, but physics is physics, chemistry is chemistry, math is math. You can't come up with a new theory. I mean, let me take it back. You can come up with a new theory, but it's based on what we already understand.
Mm.
So if you're not willing to look back at the past of what we did and didn't work, Albert Einstein
Yeah.
or Thomas Edison, you have people who try, fail, and then they find something, and they keep tweaking it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I often, because my wife was making a lot of baked goods for Thanksgiving.
Mm,
Somebody somewhere along the line said, if I walk along the beach and see this thing and crack it open, there's something slimy in there. I'll eat it. Right? We didn't, right? Or we walk in the woods and see this nice berry. Well, I eat that one, and the person eats it, drops dead. Then the Indian tribe goes, "Don't eat that one,"
yeah,
right?
yeah, right.
And
Exactly.
so somehow they said, well, let's mix this flour and this sugar and an egg and a little
Mm,
salt and a little yeast, and we'll make bread,
right.
right? And somebody didn't come out and sit down and go, here's the recipe. They tried many, many different ways. And so they came up with different kinds of bread, right? It's the
Mm,
same thing with looking at how do we do technology in space. It's not
yeah.
always going to be the same, but if we don't
Mm,
look at what we did in the past,
right.
what do they say? If you don't understand the past, you're destined to repeat it. Something like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so it's the same kind of thing, but no, I mean, I'm more than happy to talk with you again. I mean, as I say, I'm really passionate about this, and and being a non-physician has really, I think, helped me in my career path because I've been able to be in the room where it happened and be
Right.
able to present, discuss, and bring a different viewpoint. I think a
Mm,
lot of times when people are the one mindset, they studied that insect in the front part of the
yeah.
reflecting pool for 5 years. That's what they know.
Mm,
And what really amazes me about our team with SolaMed is we have a wide variety of very highly educated, highly disciplined
mm.
individuals. Sarah is great if you talk with her.
I have. Yeah.
Alex is our former astronaut. Smith Johnson, he's another NASA flight surgeon, retired NASA flight surgeon. But we have a whole host of people that really helping us push the envelope.
Yeah. No, it's yeah, like I said, this has been incredible for me. Uh, I love your journey. I think I can relate to it a lot. I think for many years, not I was striving so hard to be the aerospace engineer, and but there's so many other things that you can do without a specific title or role, and so
Yeah. Well, look at all the stuff behind me. Every one of
yep,
these books, I have a book chapter in.
yep,
And I mean, this book here, to give you an idea, I'll show you the actual the names at the top. Okay. So Arnold Nicogosi and Rich Williams and J.D. Polk are all former NASA chief medical officers.
yeah.
Carolyn Huntoon was the director of life sciences, the director of the Johnson Space Center, undersecretary for energy for George Bush.
Mm,
Then there's Victor Schneider, public health doctor. And then there's me, right? So I mean, I'm in good company. And
yeah.
J.D. Polk also used to be the undersecretary for health affairs for Homeland Security,
Oh wow,
and he was in charge of the Cleveland Clinic air flight program.
crazy.
So the point here is that when you're seen as someone who can get the job done
Mm,
and not, I mean, some people say, well, he's arrogant or he's high and mighty. Well, that's not that's not being arrogant. It's being comfortable in your own skin,
yes.
right? There are many. I mean, I would imagine if you sat down with Elon Musk, the man is probably brilliant.
Hmm.
He's probably quirky, but I'm sure
Definitely,
he's brilliant. And
definitely.
Jeff Bezos is probably a very smart man as well.
Yeah.
But when it comes to space exploration, rocket technology, crew health, these two they can't hold a stick to some of these people.
Mm,
Some of the people that are working there now either have flown in space, long duration space, or they were there when they built these rockets to take us to the moon.
yeah.
And it's always funny when they started this whole issue about downsizing Doge,
Mm,
which to me was a complete failure. Um, Back in the 1990s, they had a thing during the Gore Clinton administration,
mm.
Clinton Gore, excuse me, where they would offer $25,000 to federal employees as an early, if you left early, if you had the
Oh,
time, it's a
yeah,
buyout, right?
yeah.
So that was the whole idea, was to downsize the federal government. The only reason why the federal government got bigger because of 9/11 and the creation of the Department of Homeland
Sure.
Security. So the engineers of the 1960s and 70s and 80s retired in the 1990s, walked out the door singing feet per second. They weren't singing,
Right.
but feet per second, right? the backfill, new engineers coming in from Caltech and MIT and so forth are coming in the door singing meters per second.
Yep.
And you know what happened, right? The $1.5 billion spacecraft that was supposed to land on Mars crashed into Mars because there was no transition.
Yep.
So when you even every year, every 4 years, when the administration change, if the administration changes, there's a book of materials that's put together by every office within NASA to present to the president's transition team, and whoever he or she
Oh,
decides is going to be the administrator, which we still have an administrator
we're still a
for
year.
NASA.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's been going on for quite some time. That transition then allows people to, and some people will leave. The appointees will
Definitely.
leave,
Yep.
right? Bill Nelson left. I'm looking at my Exceptional Public Service Medal. Bill Nelson signed it last year,
Mm.
2 years ago, uh, and he left. And so you have people who are career federal employees who take over until a new person is mentioned. Now, Sean Duffy is not an aerospace engineer. He's not. He's a politician. He maybe even I don't know if he even worked in some other area, but doesn't have the background. So he's going to depend, or whoever he or she is depends on the people who are left behind,
Right.
and those people then help us, navigate into the future.
Mm.
And so NASA itself, I don't think NASA will remain the same as it
Yeah.
is, 5 years ago. It's not going to go away. It's not going to be put in some other agency. It's going to be trimmed down and with a focus on specifically on exploration.
Mm.
And then you have commercial companies to provide, the materials you need to get to the space and so forth.
Hmm.
Until China lands on the moon with humans and then, gives us the finger.
Yes.
That's when you have another space race. If we're
Yep.
not already in a space race.
Yep.
That's predicated if we're not already in World War III,
Yeah.
which is another thing that's underlying the surface of many of these things. It's the competition for, who's got the best rocket, who's got the best stealth fighter, who's got the best aircraft carrier, who's got,
Hypersonic missile. Yep.
right? I mean,
Hmm.
all these things are really pushing the envelope instead of saying, like, I don't know if you've traveled a lot around the world, but I've been to 37 countries in my career. And when you're sitting there in a cafe, people are just walking to the market, they're walking to the opera, they're walking to the bar, whatever they're doing, but they could care less who's president of the United States.
Oh yeah.
They could care less that they're going to be invaded. The only time I ever saw that was in Albania. We went to a national park along the beach, the Adriatic Sea,
Yeah.
for a cookout, and the cookout involved each of us got a rack of 16 different fish.
Ooh.
So it's just one of those big racks. It opened up like one of the sandwich things, and there was a
Yeah.
fish in each one of the things, and they would flip it on the grill and cook. Great, right? So
Yeah.
we go out to the beach, and the beach has all these concrete bunkers that are about 2 feet above the ground, but 6 feet deep. I'm like, what are those? Oh, those are bunkers because we were worried the Americans were going to invade. I'm like, why would the Americans invade Albania?
Mm.
I mean, we're going to go to war against Yugoslavia. I mean, there was a war, the Balkans War, during the
Right.
administration of Bill Clinton, but that's the only place I ever saw that. But when I've been to Russia, I haven't been since all this stuff happens,
Mm.
with COVID and with the war in Ukraine. But I've been to Ukraine as well, and those people are kind of like people who live in Kentucky and Virginia and Ohio in
Yeah.
1864. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a civil war, and
Right.
because they're both, I mean, yes, Ukrainians are different than Russians, but they speak a common language. They all look the same.
Yeah.
They all behave the same. They just have different belief structures. Well, as you can tell, I can talk forever.
I'm very excited for the next one, Chuck.
Yeah, just let me know. I mean, we can do it. If you want to do it once a month or something for a couple months.
Oh my God,
Let
that'd
me
be
know.
amazing. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
give me-
we'll hash out the details. But Chuck, thank you so much for joining us for Today in Space. Is there any last minute thought or just a final thought to leave folks with?
No, I think that I think that the takeaway message is that space exploration is not new. It's dangerous, but it's also worth the risks,
Hmm.
right? I mean, it's sort of like I don't know. I was trying to think of an analogy. It's 4th and 1, and you're on your own 20-yard line, and you're like, if you don't make the first down, the other team's going to score a touchdown.
Right.
and you make a first down and you go on and win the game. You have to take risks,
Yeah.
but you have to be smart about it.
Yeah.
And I think that space exploration is inherently part of our DNA,
Mm.
not biologically, but emotionally and psychologically. We have this insatiable desire to discover new things, and as we go down this path, I think we'll discover more and more about ourselves as human beings, but also about our place in the solar system.
Mm.
And I have no idea if there's other things out there. I actually doubt it, but maybe.
Yeah.
Certainly, some of the exploration they've done on the Earth mimics what's being done, what's could be done on Mars, as
Yeah.
far as craters and looking for fossilized, material and water and so forth. But I think eventually we will be off planet, and each of these steps we have to take will get us there. But we have to be smart about going and
Mm.
just don't say, oh, well, I'm just going to launch 100 people and not think of the consequences, because
Yeah.
we also have to be respective of the earth as well and make sure
Mm.
we take care of it. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chuck, thank you so much for being on. Folks, spread love, spread science, and stay curious, and we'll see you on the next episode of Today in Space. See ya.